and welcome to the Fallen Pioneer Pantry. My name is Marin, and today we're going through all of the random preservation projects that I did and filmed in February and March. As you can see here, I am going back to one of the projects that I did in February and just kind of checking in on it and hopefully continuing it. So we'll get to that later. But for now, let's get started with February's random preservation projects. Then we'll do a little snippet of March. I didn't film very much in March because we were sick most of the month. But I'll show you the little bit that I did get filmed, and then we'll come back to this. Good morning. We're back with another random preservation project. Today we are making breadcrumbs because I have really been struggling with my whole wheat sandwich bread recipe. And I just can never seem to get it to bake all the way through. Like, it sounds hollow when I bang on the bottom, and then I let it cool all the way, I cut into it, and it's raw in the middle. So I am making breadcrumbs from the 2 loaves that were in the freezer that didn't cook all the way through. Because if I make breadcrumbs, then they finish cooking. At least that's my thought. And they've been in the freezer, so they can't have gone bad. Anyway, let's get started. So I'm sorry if you can hear my dog barking in the background. I don't know what's wrong with him this morning. I've already sliced up one of the loaves of bread. I tried to get the chunks into fairly even sizes. I do have one more loaf that I'll slice up. It'll probably have to go on a different tray. And then I have already preheated the oven to 170. As per usual with these random preservation projects, I did not do any research beforehand, so I'm just going to put it in there at 170 for forever until it's dry and crumbly. And then we will move on to, I'll probably stick it in the food processor and show you guys what that looks like. So I just wanted to show you kind of what I was talking about. Like, this top of the bread seems okay. But then when you come down here to the bottom, I squish it and it just kind of turns back into dough. So I'll have to keep working on the bread recipe. I had these in the oven on 170 for probably 5 or 6 hours. And then I left them in there to cool and forgot about them when I started preheating the oven to make cookies. Luckily, they didn't burn. But they do need to cool down again, and once they have cooled down, we'll put them in the food processor and see how that goes. Okay, so let me show you. I didn't fill this super full because when I did some onions in it the other day, they didn't chop super evenly. What's that word? They weren't all the same size. And I was reading through the manual and it said don't overfill the chopper. So we're going to try this. Maybe I made them too crispy. I think these are going to be some really fine breadcrumbs. All right. Is that what you'd expect breadcrumbs to look like? And some of these pieces are still pretty big. But honestly, at this point, I almost feel like I'm just making flour. So tell me down in the comments below if I just cooked the bread for too... Oops. If I just cooked the bread for too long or something else. I'm going to try this a little bit differently this time. Just a few in there. See, so few in there, it's almost doing nothing. So I wonder if maybe I just need to fill it more full. Just experimenting together. Well, I think we're just gonna finish this all out because it's just gonna end up like flour, which, you know, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not what I expect breadcrumbs to be like. But that's what happens when we do random preservation projects and don't do any research first. So it looks mostly done, and then I pull out something like this. So I wish I had, because I've got a strainer, it's just dirty right now. Maybe I should wash that and we'll try that. Hi everybody, I am editing and realizing that I never finished filming the breadcrumbs. I think I did technically finish filming it, but my battery died and I didn't notice, and then I didn't make time to go back and refilm it. But basically I put it through the strainer, just a regular strainer, not a sieve or anything, to get out the biggest chunks, and kept blending those until they went through the strainer. The whole wheat breadcrumbs turned out okay. We've used them a couple times. We'll continue to use them until they're gone. I did make some more breadcrumbs just using hot dog buns that had gotten a little freezer burned, and I didn't dry them for quite as long in the oven, and that worked out much better. I don't know if it's because it's not whole wheat or if I just didn't dry it too long this time, but I will show you those in another video. I'm planning to use them to make meatballs. But anyway, moving on. I'm back with another random preservation project. So I have had this sage hanging somewhere in my kitchen since it was given to me this fall. And I've used it a couple of times, just like a leaf or two here or there. And I finally want to get it down and just put it in a jar. I've never done this before, and I didn't do any research beforehand. That's kind of the theme with these random preservation projects. So I'm going to try a couple of different things and just take you along with me. So I'm going to start with just one of the stems. It looks like there are 4 stems in here. And I'm going to start just by pushing the leaves out because the stem is not edible. I mean, I don't know if it's edible, but it does not look like it would taste very good at this point, at least. So it seems like some of the inner leaves didn't dry quite as crispy. It smells so good. Okay, so this is what it looks like right now. And I'm going to try first just kind of crunching it up with my hands. The little leaf stem parts are kind of pokey. Okay, so I could do this, but I think it's going to take a while, and I'm not sure I'm willing to spend that time, and I also am not sure if I'm going to be able to crunch up the little stem bits just by squishing. I think I'd have to go individually stem by stem. So the next thing we're going to try is my food processor. I need to get that plugged in. So we're going to grab, I don't want to do them all just in case it completely ruins it. Because it's still totally usable just in its full form. It just doesn't quite, like you have to take it out before you eat the food. Let's see if we can get this off. And then I'm just going to do the same thing. Maybe I'll just kind of peel them. It does smell so good. It's funny because just having it hanging in the kitchen, either it doesn't really smell strongly when it's just hanging and not being touched, or I just have gotten used to it, but the smell is so much stronger when I'm putting my hands in it. Okay, let's get the ones that kind of fell off. I think that's just a stem. Okay. So, let's see if I can keep you in view without having to change the angle of my camera. We're just gonna put it in here, and I just have my chopping blade in there. And I will link this food processor down below. I don't think it's anything special, but it's worked well for me so far. And I am just going to pulse this. that's working, so I'm going to puree for a little bit. Because these are pretty dry, and I'm not seeing, let's see how well you can see that. I'm not seeing it, it doesn't seem to be liquefying, so I think it's dry enough that the puree setting is not going to liquefy it. Okay. Okay. I'm fairly happy with that. I'm not sure exactly what it's supposed to look like. I think, first of all, let's open it up and get a nice close look. I'm going to carefully reach in there and grab some. So, you can kind of see that it's not becoming like individual flakes like the spices or herbs that you buy at the grocery store. And I still have some stems that are not breaking up. But I think for my purposes, this is going to be probably as good as it's going to get. I will probably want to, well, I might go through and pull out some of the stems, just so there's not giant stems when I'm using it in cooking. Or maybe I'll use it to make potpourri, because I do have sage from the grocery store. And this just smells so much better than that. Once again, I somehow did not film the rest of this, but I just chopped up the rest of the sage in the food processor just like the others and put it in a jar. And I've used little bits of it here and there, and I definitely want to do a little bit more research before I do any more drying and or grinding of my own herbs. Moving on. So today we are preserving up some limes that I got on sale at the grocery store. I started by just slicing them in half and starting to squeeze them, and I realized that was a bad idea, and I went and put on some gloves. I did try squeezing them, just cutting them in half and squeezing them, and then I tried a little bit later cutting them in quarters and squeezing them, and then in eighths and squeezing them, and I think what I finally settled on was quarters. I got a little bit more juice out when I went all the way down to eighths, but it seemed to not be enough more to be worth the effort. So I just squeezed them all and put the rinds in the quart jar that you see to the right, and I'll let you watch just a little bit of how I do this, and then we'll move on to the next day and see what I did with the lime juice. Okay, so it's the next day, and I did keep the limes in the fridge overnight. When I remembered to start recording, I had already poured off a little bit of the juice, but then I went back and kind of smashed down the limes a little bit with a wooden spoon, and this is the extra juice that I got out thanks to doing that. Then I decided to just fill this jar up with vinegar. I'm going to hopefully be able to use this as a homemade cleaning solution. We'll see a little bit more about that later. So to preserve the lime juice, I decided to freeze it in an ice cube tray, and all of our ice cube trays had ice in them. So I'm emptying this one out, and we used the ice later for our juice that we had with dinner. And at first I only emptied out about 8 of the little holes and then started pouring in the lime juice. That was not the smartest thing to do, because I definitely had more than 8 ice cubes worth of lime juice, and getting the ice cubes out when I couldn't move the tray was much more difficult than it would have been if I had just taken them all out from the beginning. And miraculously, we had exactly 12 ice cubes worth of lime juice. So I just filled up each little cube, put the lid back on, and stuck them in the freezer. So in the month of March, we had family staying with us for a while, and then somehow we all got sick. And so I didn't do a lot of preservation projects, and most of the ones that I did not have the energy to film. But one thing that I did manage to film was making cheese. We were gifted 2 gallons of whole milk, and we were not going to be able to go through them before they expired. And rather than freezing them, I decided to try making farmer's cheese. So I put a half a gallon of whole milk in a thick-bottomed pot and put the temperature on low. And I just let it go for a while, and I tried to stir pretty regularly. I did feel like I was getting a little bit of scalding on the bottom, so I tried to scrape that up. I don't know if that's the right thing to do, but that's what I attempted to do. So I continued stirring, and I checked the temperature regularly. I did have to go down and get my little one, and he hung out for a little bit while we finished bringing the milk up to temperature. Then once it was at temperature, I turned off the heat and added the pre-measured 1/4 cup of vinegar, stirred it up a little bit, and left it to sit. Once the cheese had sat for probably 15 minutes, I came back and started to scoop out the curds. I just have this, it's not a slotted spoon, but it's a spoon with holes in it that I used to scoop out most of the curds. I did eventually end up just pouring all of the curds and whey through my strainer and cheesecloth to make sure that I got as much of the cheese curd as possible. Once I had gotten all of the cheese curd into my cheesecloth, I drained off some of the whey enough so that the strainer wasn't sitting in the whey, and then I left the cheese curds just to sit for quite a while so that as much of the whey could drain off naturally as possible. Then once I'd let it sit for a while, I gathered up the corners and sides of my cheesecloth. This is actually just a thin dish towel, not real cheesecloth. And I started to squeeze as much of the whey as I could out of the cheese, as much whey as was left. I do not recommend using a regular dish towel for this. I definitely had a hard time squeezing whey through the dish towel. Like, I felt like whey was coming out of the cheese and just not draining through the dish towel. So in the future, I will definitely use real cheesecloth for this step. Towards the end, I did try squeezing the cheese just in my hands without the cheesecloth, and that was not particularly successful. So I stopped and just added the salt. They do give a measurement for it in the recipe that I used, but I just used a little bit and mixed it in with my hands, once again still sitting in that cheesecloth. Once the salt was all mixed in, I actually had a little bit of a difficult time deciding how to shape the cheese. It said that you could wrap it up in the cheesecloth and then put a plate on top of it to kind of form it into a little bit of a not a ball, but like a not square block. Anyway, but I couldn't figure out how to get the cheesecloth to sit nicely, and so I just ended up pulling the cheesecloth all together around the top of it and twisting it and just sticking it in the fridge like that on the plate. And I just left it in the fridge overnight, and the next day I took it out and put it in a Tupperware, and it tasted fine. I mean, it's a very mild, plain cheese, so I'm looking forward to trying other kinds of cheese in the future.
as you can see, I was left with about 6.5, 7 cups of whey. And I just put this in jars with lids on them and stuck it in the fridge. I used some of it in a soup, and I haven't used the rest of it yet. So if you have any ideas for me, let me know.
So in February, as you saw, I made lime juice cubes, which are in the freezer, and I used the peels of that along with the peels of a couple of oranges that we just ate to start my own cleaning solution. And I just kind of filled it to the brim with vinegar and put the lid on because I was trying not to get mold on the top. And I haven't opened it since. I'm gonna carefully open this up. All right, so far so good, no mold. And strain this. Okay, you can't see from there, but I will show you later because this is like the brightest kind of orangey color. Let's see, I think I'm on the wrong side of my counter, which is interesting because most of these were actually lime peels, which are green, not orange or yellow. There's that. Don't want this to drip all over. Okay, I'm going to come around and show you. I don't know how well you can see because it's in a metal bowl, but it's just this bright orange color. Almost like, I would say almost like pine sol. So we're going to rinse this jar out so that we can strain, because I see there is still some pulp in this, and so I do want to strain it a little bit better. So we're going to rinse this out so I have something to strain it into. Okay, now that we have a pulp-free jar, I'm going to grab my metal sieve strainer. I just remembered I have a smaller one. I always think that I have everything I need for these projects out, then I never do. Okay, so I've got my little sieve. And I can still see some little floaties in here. So I think if you wanted it to be really, really clear, you would probably have to strain it through cheesecloth, but I'm not going to do that. And of course, I have not done any additional research on this, so I don't know how much or how little you're supposed to dilute this before you use it to clean. I think I've probably got maybe 1¼ cups in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill this jar the rest of the way with water and call that my dilution. Okay, so now I've got this, and it still looks nice and yellow. I'll bring this over here, see if you guys can see the little floaties. And then, since it's kind of hard to use a cleaning solution if it's just in a jar like this, I have this glass bottle that apparently I didn't clean after the last thing I used in it. So we're going to do that really quick. Okay, well, I tried to rinse it out. I think the last thing I had in here was probably some kind of hair product. So, but I don't know. If any of you have any suggestions for me on how to rinse jars all the way, especially when they're like narrow, have a narrow neck like this on top of a wider jar, I always have a hard time getting them fully rinsed. Alright, and then we have our very own homemade all-purpose cleaner. And we will see how this works. I'll try to remember to bring you guys along as I use it. The other thing that I wanted to do in relation to this project is that I have started another jar. This one is almost all oranges, just that we've been eating over the last month or so. And I've just been stuffing the peels in there, and I haven't been super careful about keeping them covered, but I have been watching for mold and I haven't seen any yet. The liquid in this one is also looking very yellow. So I'm thinking I'm going to pour this out. Keep the peels in there for now. And we're going to see if we can do a second batch. And if it still gives us that nice, strong, yellowy color. So we're going to take some of the lime rinds and orange peels from the one that we made. It was this one. And then I'll show you what my little one has been playing with. Is I bought these, let's see, where'd my box go? Well, I don't know where my box went, but I bought these fermentation springs and lids from Ball. And the cleaning products, at least, you're not fermenting anything. The vinegar is already there. It's more like pickling than fermenting. And like a quick pickle, fridge pickle type pickling, because regular pickling is a type of fermenting. But I bought these because even when I'm doing this, I do want everything to stay under the vinegar so that I don't have to constantly watch it to make sure that it doesn't get moldy. And so we are going to try these out. Make sure that'll, okay. So now we pour more vinegar in here. Enough that I know it will cover. And I think I can actually fit a few more rinds back in here. I'm going to put this weight in, and then you just put the lid on and screw it down. Okay, and as you can see, all of the rinds and peels are held under the water by that, or the vinegar by that spring. So we'll let that go for another, I don't know, month, 6 weeks, and see how that works. And then we will come back and look at it again. So thank you for being here with me today as we went through these random preservation projects and checked back in on one of them. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like if you want to follow along as we continue to grow, preserve, store, and cook food and other random things. Then please subscribe. I'm really happy to have you here. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time on the Palma Pioneer Pantry.